In this video we'll work on Ruth chapter 1, verses 21 and 22. But first, I watched the previous video and I noticed that I made a mistake. I'd like to correct that now. In the adjective phrases, I inserted this new group, phrase final punctuation, but then I put this new particle into this group down here. So let's drag this group down. It should come after that group. And now let's drag this particle into there. Okay, so now this phrase structure rule is correct. So let's start working on Ruth 1:21, to have. That person has food for his donkey. So there's a beneficiary NP, we'll make it oblique 1 with the preposition for. We don't need this. Okay. Generated text is identical. Take away. Okay. The guard took away the food from Daniel. So there's a source noun phrase. With the word from. But actually it's better to say the guard took the food away from Daniel. That away should be moved. That's a preposition. Some verbs in English include prepositions that actually get inserted at the end of the object noun phrase. We won't do that in this rule here. I'll show you how to do that in a minute. Okay. Let's edit take away. This away should be a modifier. And we want to give it a different part of speech, a different tag. Let's call it a verbal preposition in the object NP. So then we'll write a movement rule that will move these prepositions that have these tags into the object noun phrase. Okay, took. Taken. Taking, takes. You've just entered a new constituent into verb phrases called verbal preposition in the object NP. Do you want to edit your first verb phrase for a search rule now? We're going to say no, because we're going to write a movement rule here that will move these verbal preposition in the object NP to the object NP. So these will never actually appear in the verb phrase. So we're going to say no. But let's write a movement rule. This isn't part of questions. Let's add a new group. This will be triggered by verbs. Okay, so it'll be a verb phrase and a noun phrase. This will have a verb, and it will also have a verbal preposition in the object NP. We won't specify which one. There will be many of these. Verbal preposition in the object NP. Then here we want this to be an object. We can say not in a sequence if there are multiple objects. John took the book and the pencils away from Mary. So this should go in either not in a sequence or the last coordinate. And we will now move this from here to here. We've just entered a new constituent into verb phrases called, we're again going to say no. TPTA isn't smart enough to realize that we just moved something into a noun phrase. We need to edit the noun phrase structure rule. This will go along here, add position. So let's insert a new constituent into that group. If we look here, it's not here. Constituents that are moved by movement rules won't appear in this list. So we need to type that name exactly as we did before, including all the capital letters, etc. Verbal verbal preposition in the object NP. So there it is. Okay, took those things away. And if we rest our cursor here, it says moved by movement rule, preposition movement, rule 1, then positioned by phrase structure rule, noun phrases, constituent number 18, verbal preposition in the object NP. So that all worked properly, generated text is identical. We will have many other verbs that include a preposition, and that preposition actually ends up in the object NP. Let's go to the next sentence. Don't call me Naomi. Okay, this call, it can take an optional state noun phrase or a proposition. For this sentence, don't call me Naomi. We don't need this rule right now. So I'm going to tag it as unnecessary. When we need it, as soon as we come to an occurrence where there's an object complement clause, then we'll activate this rule and we'll do something with it. But for now, we don't need that. Why should you call me Naomi? Generated text is identical. The Lord caused me to suffer. Okay, the people suffered for the Messiah. There's an optional beneficiary noun phrase. We won't insert a comment because we're not using that. Generated text is identical. The Lord caused bad. I don't think we'll need this. To happen. Things happened to the king. So in the destination, we want the preposition to. Okay, generated text is identical. That's the last sentence in this verse. Generated text is identical. Let's save it. And we'll go to verse 22. Return. Okay, return takes both a source and a destination. So we need from and to. Okay, generated text is identical. Generated text is identical. Harvest. Cain harvested crops from the ground. We don't need all of that. Naomi and Ruth arrived in Bethlehem during the time that people started harvesting barley at. During the time when people start harvesting. Okay, we've seen situations similar to this where there's a preposition and we want a different relativizer. In this case, when. We've seen this with where several times. Let's go to our... Okay, now this preposition is in the semantic representations. It's not inserted by a theta grid adjustment rule. So we can handle this up here. There's where. Okay, when. So we can add this at to here. So now this rule will apply either to at or in. You may remember we have another rule down here in subordinate clauses, relative clauses. This also converts that to where and deletes the preposition. It's doing the same thing as this rule up here, which that's not good. There's a reason these are separate. But we may want to move this rule down to here. It's not good to be doing the exact same task in two different places. So, we'll think about that for a while. Okay, for now, I'm not going to move it. We'll leave this here. But in general, we shouldn't be having two different rules do the exact same thing. So, but we'll think about that for a while. Okay, generated text is identical. That's the last sentence. Generated text is identical. Let's save it. And that's the end of Ruth chapter 1. In the next video, we'll import the lexical data for Ruth chapter 2.